Imagine you are walking through a museum, say 100 years from now.
Okay.
You're checking out the exhibits, and you pass a display case showing an ancient smartphone, which, that makes perfect sense.
Right. Totally normal.
But then the next display case holds a map of the United States.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and the one right after that, it's a diorama of a traditional nuclear family like a married couple and their kids just frozen there behind glass.
That is quite the visual.
It really is.
Hmm.
And in today's deep dive, we are exploring a radically provocative essay that argues this exact scenario isn't just like a sci-fi possibility, it is a biological and technological inevitability.
Yeah, it's a wild ride. The piece we're unpacking today is from February 2025. It's an essay written by an author named Xu Eng, and it's titled, Let Our Consciousness Enter the New Era First.
Which is quite a title.
It is, yeah. And the core premise is that the rapid advancement of technology isn't simply going to, change how you commute or how you do your job. The argument is that this technological leap actually mandates a complete teardown of human societal structures.
I mean, we are talking about everything here, from the nation state to the very concept of marriage being entirely dismantled.
Exactly.
Schwiffing basically proposes that to survive what is coming, humanity has to undergo this unprecedented spiritual shift. And what I think is so fascinating about this text is how the author brings you, the reader, into this massive existential crisis.
Yeah, it's very clever.
Because Schwiffing doesn't start with, high-level philosophy.
Yeah.
The essay starts by asking you incredibly blunt, almost comical questions about how you use everyday tools.
Right. It acts as this brilliant rhetorical wedge. The author asks, now that we have cars and airplanes, would you still travel long distances in an ox cart?
Obviously not.
Exactly. Or, now that we have smartphones, would you still write a physical letter, walk it all the way to a post office, and trust a mailman to carry it thousands of miles away?
The imagery there is just super vivid. Sui Feng asks if you still use an abacus to do math. Or, would you walk 2 kilometers every single morning just to fetch water for the day?
Right, or wash clothes in a river.
Yeah, or carry a basket of dirty laundry down to the river. Or build a house by stacking mud bricks. When you lay out all those historical methods like that, they don't just look inefficient to us. They look, totally absurd to a modern person.
And that's the trap, right? By forcing you to acknowledge the absurdity of washing clothes in a river when a washing machine exists, the author is psychologically conditioning you for a much, much larger leap.
Because you've already agreed with the premise.
Exactly. You concede that when a superior tool arrives, the old tool doesn't just adapt, it gets completely discarded.
But I really struggle with the scale of that leap, though. I mean, it is very easy to throw out an old abacus because you downloaded a calculator app. That feels like, cleaning out a junk drawer.
Sure, it's a minor upgrade.
Right.
Yeah.
But Zufen takes this logic, this basic logic of upgrading a tool, and uses it to demand we throw out the very concept of a traditional human life. So I have to ask, is it actually intellectually sound to equate upgrading your phone with rendering your entire way of life obsolete?
Well, whether we find it comfortable or not, the mechanism the author describes is historically consistent. I mean, think about the ox cart.
Yeah.
The ox cart isn't just a piece of wood on wheels. It represents an entire era of human limitation, of resource scarcity, geographic isolation, the infrastructure of society back then, like where we built towns, how we treated, who we fought, all of it was dictated by the limitations of the ox cart.
Oh, I see what you mean.
Yeah, so Shuifeng's argument is that if the foundational tools we use to survive fundamentally change, the societal structures built around those old tools must also collapse. You simply cannot run a global, instantaneous digital economy using the social structures of an agrarian mud brick society.
So if the tools dictate the society, we really have to look at the new tools Zhu Feng is introducing here. Because the essay shifts pretty quickly from those historical observations to a futuristic projection. And it all centers on the rise of what the author calls silicon-based life.
Right, and this is where the economic and existential realities really collide. Silicon-based life, in this context, refers to artificial intelligence and advanced robotics.
Right.
And the text argues that these systems will very soon replace almost all manual and programmable labor.
And Xu Feng names very specific professions that are on the chopping block. Accountants, lawyers, teachers, clerks, statisticians.
Basically anyone doing knowledge work.
Yeah, and even civil servants and the gas station workers who fuel vehicles. The underlying mechanism here seems to be that if a job can be codified into a process, an automated system is just going to do it better, faster, and obviously without needing a salary.
Which brings us to a pretty devastating conclusion about the economic value of a human being.
Oh, definitely.
The author is painting this scenario where human labor drops to a value of virtually zero. With the growing dominance of silicon-based life, Shu Feng asserts that humanity is evolving into an unnecessary species.
An unnecessary species. That is such a harsh phrase. The essay suggests that people will simply become consumers of Earth's resources and producers of waste.
Yeah, it's bleak.
It kind of makes me think of humanity becoming the ultimate trust fund kid. Like, if silicon-based life does all the actual physical and intellectual work required to keep the planet running, do we just sit around consuming the dividends?
That's the billion-dollar question.
Because the author follows this up with an incredibly ominous warning. Shu Feng asks if we are on the eve of a great purification.
Yeah, that phrase carries a really heavy, almost apocalyptic undertone.
It does. And we really need to unpack what a great purification looks like on a day-to-day level. Does the author view humanity as a pest that needs to be actively exterminated by these machines? Or is this more of a natural evolutionary aging out process for people who just refuse to adapt?
Based on the mechanisms described in the text, it's really less about a violent cinematic extermination like Terminator and more about severe social obsolescence.
Okay, so just becoming totally irrelevant.
Precisely. The author asks, given the reality of silicon-based life, is it still worthwhile to strain your brain trying to start a business or become rich? And the answer they give is a definitive no.
Because striving for material wealth in a fully automated world is just a fundamental misunderstanding of the era you're living in.
Exactly the point. Climbing the bureaucratic ladder or, working yourself to the bone just to scrape by, it's a dangerous trap. Think about it mechanically. If you spend your whole life trying to become the world's absolute best ox cart driver in the era of the automobile, you aren't going to be executed by the cars.
Right, they don't hunt you down.
No, you're simply going to starve because your skills have zero market value. So the Great Purification seems to refer to the clearing away of individuals and systems that just refuse to let go of these obsolete ambitions. They basically render themselves irrelevant.
Wow. Okay, so if human labor is entirely outsourced to machines, then the societal containers we built to organize that labor have absolutely no reason to exist. This creates a massive causal chain in the essay. The tools changed, so the labor changed. And because the labor changed, the very fabric of society has to be replaced.
Right. And the replacement society that Shu Feng envisions is called the Life Chanyuan era. The text describes this as a time of universal brotherhood, where the entire world basically operates as one single family.
Which would require a total teardown of borders.
Exactly.
The essay claims that the nation-state is going to end, arguing that nationalism itself is foolish. The idea of distinguishing that, this is our country and that is another country is framed as a totally outdated concept.
Yeah, it's treated like a relic.
And again, Shu Feng names the superpowers directly. The United States, Germany, Russia, Iran, China. The author states flatly that all these nations will become historical phenomena displayed in museums.
We really have to understand the why behind this, though. A nation-state, fundamentally, is just a mechanism for protecting scarce resources and managing human labor within a specific geographic boundary.
Okay.
But if you have silicon-based life generating limitless abundance and performing literally all the labor, the functional utility of a border completely disappears. A border in this Life Chanyuan era makes about as much sense as building a giant fortress to protect a single mud brick today.
That is a great analogy. And the dismantling doesn't even stop at geopolitics. The essay states that political parties will be eliminated, religions will be eliminated, forms of currency will become obsolete, officials and billionaires will be completely replaced.
It's a clean sweep.
It is. But I want to pause on what I think is the most jarring claim in the entire text. Shu Feng argues that getting married, starting a family, and raising children as a safeguard for old age will also be phased out. They're going to be replaced by a structure called the second home.
Yeah, the dissolution of the nuclear family is perhaps the most difficult concept for a contemporary reader to accept, but it actually follows the exact same mechanical logic as the end of the nation-state.
I'm going to need you to walk me through the logistics of this second home, because I can wrap my head around ancient empires becoming museum exhibits. But eliminating the family unit, isn't the desire for connection to raise children biologically hardwired into us? How does a society even function or organize itself without the family at its core? What does the second home actually do?
Let's break down the author's deeply pragmatic view of the family. If you look throughout human history, Why did people primarily marry and have large families?
To work the farm, mostly, and to make sure someone could take care of them when they got too old to work.
Yes. The family was, first and foremost, an economic safety net. It was a localized welfare system in a very harsh, labor-intensive world. Swefeng is arguing that our modern romanticization of the family unit actually masks its original functional purpose.
Interesting.
In the Life Genuine era, where silicon-based life provides all the care, the resources, the maintenance, you no longer need biological offspring to ensure your survival in old age.
So the second home is essentially this communal, borderless living arrangement where the AI just acts as the ultimate provider and caretaker.
That is the implication, yeah. The global collective becomes the family. If traditional modes of production change, the culture simply must align with the laws of the new era. Clinging to the idea of a traditional marriage or raising kids for financial or physical security is, to the author, as illogical as holding onto that ox cart. And that biological drive you mentioned, it's viewed as a secondary trait that will either adapt or just fade away once the environmental pressure of survival is completely removed.
That is an incredibly cynical way to view human relationships, though. I mean,
Yeah.
stripping away all the poetry, all the love we attach to family, and just reducing it to a defunct economic model.
It's very clinical.
Yeah, and it forces a massive question. If the physical world, our jobs, our borders, our governments, our money, and even our most intimate family structures, is dismantled and handed over to AI, what on earth is left for us? Where does human consciousness actually go?
Well, this is where Swifeng makes the final pivot into what we can really only describe as a hyper-digital spirituality. If the physical realm is completely managed by silicon-based life, the only domain left for humanity is the spiritual and virtual realm.
The essay argues that in the future, our primary interactions will not be with concrete physical individuals. We will be interacting almost exclusively with virtual information.
Right. And the author asks every person currently holding a smartphone to just reflect on their own behavior.
Okay.
Think about your day-to-day life. Do you spend more time scrolling on your device, absorbing information from across the globe, or do you spend more time engaging in deep, face-to-face conversations with the people physically sitting next to you?
Oh, for the vast majority of people listening right now, screen time wins that battle by a absolute landslide.
Exactly. And Xifeng extrapolates that behavioral trend into a philosophical absolute. Humanity's need for what the author calls spiritual and soul wealth is going to completely eclipse our need for material wealth.
And the essay makes this really fascinating claim about distance. It states that the joy and spiritual satisfaction brought by someone far away, like through a screen, virtually, will actually surpass what is provided by the people physically nearby.
Let's look at the mechanics of why the author believes this too. Physical proximity is largely accidental. You interact with your neighbors or your coworkers simply because geography placed you together.
Yeah.
But virtual connection is based on pure intentional resonance. You connect with information and consciousnesses that perfectly align with your internal state, regardless of physical geography.
But I have to challenge the author here, because there is a massive paradox in this logic.
How so?
Normally, when we analyze society's relationship with technology, the overwhelming consensus is that smartphones are isolating us. The common critique is that staring at a screen all day is hollowing out our souls.
Wow.
But Xufeng is arguing the exact opposite.
Yeah.
This essay claims that scrolling and engaging with virtual connections actually provides superior soul wealth compared to sitting in a room with a physical human being. We really have to ask, is this a profound spiritual awakening, or is Xufeng just providing the ultimate philosophical rationalization for being terminally online?
That tension is the crux of the entire essay. I mean, to understand Xufeng's perspective, we really have to redefine the concept of wealth. In a physical world where human labor is useless, accumulating material wealth or physical influence is just a dead end. Wealth is therefore redefined as the cultivation of a perfected soul garden.
A perfected soul garden. It sounds like something you'd hear at a meditation retreat, but like applied to the metaverse.
Yeah.
What does that actually entail in practice?
It basically involves a radical detachment from the physical world. Think about how people already curate their digital existence. They find communities in obscure forums or virtual reality spaces that fulfill them entirely while completely ignoring the physical city they actually live in.
Right.
Xufeng is elevating that behavior to a spiritual mandate. The text quotes this proverb-like idea. Those who do not plan for eternity are unfit to plan for even the present moment, and those who do not plan for heaven are not fit to plan for their whole life.
Bringing in concepts like eternity and heaven feels highly religious, which is weird because earlier the essay explicitly stated that religions would be eliminated.
It is, but it's a spirituality completely divorced from traditional dogma or physical institutions. Think of it this way. If silicon-based life, the robots and the AI, is going to manage the physical maintenance of the planet, then human beings have zero physical utility.
We're just in the way.
Basically, we aren't needed to farm, build, or govern. Therefore, retreating inward and deriving total spiritual satisfaction from virtual, borderless connection isn't just an excuse to play video games all day. In the author's framework, it is the only logical evolutionary path forward. The physical world belongs to the machines. The virtual world belongs to human consciousness.
It is a total bifurcation of reality.
Right.
If you refuse to make that split, like if you insist on living in the physical world, trying to find a job, trying to build a nuclear family in a suburban house.
The text is uncompromising on this point. If we cling to the old ways, we will inevitably be eliminated by the new era. The author draws a direct parallel to how television and newspapers are currently being phased out. The newspaper didn't necessarily do anything malicious, right? The medium of information delivery simply changed, rendering the printed page obsolete.
Yeah.
Human beings who cling to physical labor and traditional family structures will suffer the exact same fate. They will just fade into irrelevance because the ecosystem can no longer support their operating system.
Only those who successfully cultivate their perfected soul garden will endure.
Yeah,
Looking back at the journey this text took us on, it is genuinely staggering.
it really is.
We started with the very simple, universally accepted logic of ditching an inefficient tool. You throw away the abacus. But by applying that exact same logic to human utility, the author manages to systematically tear down the global economy, erase national borders, dismantle the concept of the family, and push humanity into a purely virtual, spiritual existence.
The essay is a masterclass in taking a universally accepted premise that technological progress phases out old systems and pushing it to its absolute existential limit. It really forces the reader to confront how much of what we consider human nature is actually just a temporary adaptation to physical hardship.
So after moving from the ox cart all the way to the life genuine era, where does this leave you, the listener?
I think the most potent takeaway is hidden in the very last line of Sui Feng's essay. The author advises, "Let our consciousness enter the new era first, and then strive to have our bodies follow."
Let the consciousness go first and then strive to have the body follow. But if we follow the mechanics of everything we just discussed, if our consciousness fully relocates to this virtual, borderless soul garden, and if silicon-based life completely takes over the physical maintenance of Earth, it raises an unavoidable question.
Yeah. Will our physical bodies even need to follow? I mean, if human consciousness derives all its joy, connection, and wealth from a virtual space, the physical body simply becomes a redundant, resource-consuming anchor.
Which brings us right back to that museum we imagined at the start of the show. We might not just be looking at exhibits of old smartphones or maps of extinct nations. The ultimate historical phenomenon, preserved behind glass for future generations of silicon-based life to study, might just be the physical human experience itself. The act of eating, sleeping, and taking up physical space could become the greatest relic of all. Something for you to mull over until next time.